Hi, I'm Mike, and today we're going to review Chapter 10 of Kotter's book, Leading Change. Chapter 10 is entitled Anchoring New Approaches in the Culture. And we notice that culture is coming at the end of the change process, not at the beginning. So how do we anchor this culture, this change into the culture? In order to anchor those roots, first you have to have roots. And shallow roots are not going to stay. They're not going to stick. If complacency starts to set in again and organizations start to do things the way they did before, then those practices are eventually going to dry up. The new things are going to wither away and die. Kotter writes about how culture is very powerful in organizations. How even if something makes sense, if we're moving in the right direction, a culture can be so strong that those old action steps wither away to nothing if culture isn't affected. Culture, Kotter writes, refers to norms of behavior and shared values among people. Norms of behavior are common and persuasive ways of acting that are found in the group and persist because that's the way they've always done things in the group. Shared values are important concerns and goals shared by people in the group and tend to shape the group behavior. For example, let's just think of a bad kind of shared acceptable group norm behavior. Uh, we'll report maybe certain things, but not others, just to make things look good. We'll do things a certain way, glossing over any important details so that it looks good for now, but long term, it may not be good. Just to get the job done more quickly, or maybe even just to make it appear that we're doing the right thing. There's a culture of let's just do this and not address the real problem. I have an experience when I worked in private corrections counseling inmates where there were a lot of inmates and perhaps not enough staff managing everything. So you'd have a room of 150 inmates, being rowdy, some people being disruptive, challenging, aggressive, manipulative. And we'd give a lecture on rational emotive behavior therapy, which a few people might be open to listening to, but then there's still a lot of people to manage, a lot of attendance to manage, people leaving the room, people coming back in, not being where they're supposed to be. And this basically was a lockdown jail, but they were allowed to go to programming throughout the day. But they're supposed to be what they're supposed to be. So now to gloss over it, it's easy to say we have just enough staff with just enough training, which I was lucky to get that job because all I had was a bachelor's in psychology. I didn't have a clinical license for mental health or anything. And I still don't right now. Right now I'm into coaching. However, to make it look good, we have all these inmates going through this program and it's talking about these steps to changing behavior in the long term. So let's just make it look like it's working. Now, actually, I understand it does work for a certain percentage, but it's not the real problem. One of the things is staffing and security, not so much just making money. So culture change. Culture can powerfully influence human behavior, Kotter writes. However, culture itself can be invisible, but we have got to act like it's always there because we know it is there. It's one thing to say we need to do things differently, but just like a fish in the water, as Kotter writes in this book here, that a leader knows that the water exists or culture exists, even though it's kind of invisible. But it's there. It's deeply ingrained, and sometimes it's more difficult to change than behavior itself. Instead of changing the culture, let's say we'll adopt these values and practices, it's better to start with the behavior change first. Any new approach to culture, to organizational change management, has to be rooted in the culture itself. We can't just say you need to do these things differently, but it has to be related somehow with what people value in the organization. There's a graph here, and I would encourage you to get this book and check it out yourself. It says that norms and group behavior are somewhat visible, but they're hard to change. How employees respond quickly to customer requests, how managers work at least 1 hour past the official close of each workday. Those are just examples. I'm not saying those are good things, but to work extra hours or whatever. But those are things that we can see demonstrated. Those are behaviors. The shared values in the organization are less easy to see, like how executives may prefer long-term debt, how employees are concerned more with quality than quantity, or maybe it's the other way around. So the values could be, let's see how many inmates we can fit in this facility and get through this program, but not care about the quality. And that can be extremely hard to change. Kotter wrote here that if any people recruiting, makes a joke here, people are recruiting you, they rarely say this, quote, "One of the big reasons we're hiring you is because we think you will fit in, that you share our implicit values and beliefs, and that you will adjust easily to our norms." And they won't say that, but that's part of that's the culture aspect of recruiting, is like the see if you're gonna be a good person to work with in your organization. Do you share our values? So that's part of it. It's the socialization and the assimilation into the company's norms and values. So how do we incorporate new practices when these cultures and organizations are so ingrained? A method that Kotter writes about is to bury an old set of practices while making sure that the replacements are firmly connected to the group's core values. Here's an example: is in the military. We want a culture of unity. We don't want separate units doing their own thing, because they are individual units and they have different specialties. But for example, one unit might be under this banner, this unit might be under this banner. They have this history of what they've done in the past. Now they need to come together to work together and be like a cohesive team as an organization. One thing that might be affected is the culture of each of those units, because now they've identified with who they've been with in that organization, their own culture within their own individual units. And now it seems like we're taking away that culture by meshing everybody together and having everybody work as a team or a unit. How do we connect the culture of each of these units, what's important and valuable to them, so that they know that they're contributing to the same meaningful work, and the new actions and behaviors they're taking are connected with those same values? That way everybody can be under yes, their own individual units, perhaps their own individual kind of styles and personalities in those units, but at the same time, embrace the unified organization working as a team together. How do we unify and relate what each unit is doing to their values and how it relates to what they're doing in the entire organization? It does take years to make change in culture. It's not something that happens overnight. And culture change comes at the end of major transformation, not at the beginning. A mistake that some leaders may make is they want to see a first step in major transformation being to alter the norms and values. This can be, this can end quickly because you want to change the norms and values. You want to instill these values differently, but that comes after the transformation process. We're starting with seeing that what we're doing here is not working. We first need to have a sense of urgency and communicate that. And then go through the process of seeing the behavior change, the action steps, how that's leading to real results and progress. And then relating what we're doing to our values and the culture. Culture changes, Kotter wrote, only happens after you've successfully altered people's actions, and the new behavior produces some group benefits for a period of time, so they can see the connection between their actions and the performance improvements. A key point that Kotter wrote is that whenever you hear of a major restructuring, reengineering, or strategic redirection, in which the first step is changing the culture, you should be concerned that it may be going down the wrong path. And the first steps that typically actually happen in the transformation process is attitude and behavior change. So anchoring the change in the culture is going to take first addressing the behavior and attitudes, and then connecting with the values.